You know, some days I record these videos back to back and I think to myself, you know what? The next one's going to be better. The next story isn't going to make me nearly as angry. Then I get into the details and it really starts to aggravate me. And that's what we're going to talk about today, because we've gone over the problems with New York State bail law. We've gone over the problems with specific district attorneys like Alvin Bragg, the district attorney of Manhattan. But the thing is, there's an all-out assault on multiple fronts. And sometimes when the bail law actually covers the appropriate action, even though it's super progressive and garbage in a lot of other regards, and the district attorney actually wants to hold someone, you end up with a radical progressive judge that ends up deciding that, hey, murdering your stepson, no big deal. I don't think you're a risk to society because, you know what? You probably don't have any more stepchildren now that I think about it. And that's what we're going to talk about today. A Bronx judge that released a guy who, by the way, is on parole for a violent assault, just without any bail, no consequences, don't worry about it, on his own recognizance, after he killed a 15-year-old who was his stepson. But before we get into that, this video is sponsored, so let's just do the ad read, and then we'll come back over here, talk about it on the other side. A new survey shows that 52% of Americans are currently trying to lose weight, but the thing is, it ain't easy. If it was, we would have a lot less people trying to get control over it. This is why you need a boost. Go over to ketowithjustice.com and get this amazing keto powder. It helps boost your chances of losing weight by elevating your ketones, and you could try this 60-day money-back guarantee for 51% off at ketowithjustice.com. Start meeting your weight loss goals today. ketowithjustice.com.
Police are investigating the death of a 15-year-old boy in the Bronx. Authorities say the teen got into a fight with his stepfather, who is now being questioned by police.
So this is the local news story that covered the initial discovery when this guy was going in for questioning after the 15-year-old stepson was killed, and the perpetrator in this instance is 28-year-old Tyrese Minter. And by the way, this was over an argument. We still don't know the origin of the argument, but it got physical, and it ended up resulting in the death of this kid. And before I give the details, I will say there are certain points of this where I could say, you know what, maybe this could be kind of accidental, and that's just based on an objective reading of the facts of the case. But there is a crucial note in this that really hammers home that Tyrese Minter is not a good person, is an absolute scumbag, and should definitely go down for this crime, because his actions post what he did to this poor kid are even worse than maybe he didn't intend for it to go down that way.
Yeah, the medical examiner has not yet released the exact cause of death, but authorities do say they noticed trauma on the neck of that 15-year-old. So police say the 15-year-old, Cordy Scott, and his 28-year-old stepfather got into an argument when the teen came home from school yesterday afternoon. The fight soon turned physical, and authorities say it appears the father put his hands on the teen's neck. Police say they arrived here at the apartment on Doris Street around 4:15 yesterday afternoon, and when they got here, they found that 15-year-old unconscious inside the apartment. He was taken to Jacoby Medical Center, but was unfortunately pronounced dead there. Now, police are questioning the stepfather right now. They're trying to figure out exactly what happened and trying to determine if that stepfather acted in self-defense.
Now, the way the local news covers this story adds a bit of ambiguity that I don't think needed to be injected in this scenario, but I will say they didn't have all the information this early on in the case, so they're speculating, and for some reason, they're giving the 28-year-old felon convicted, by the way, stepfather the benefit of the doubt over the 15-year-old, and claiming that this is possibly a self-defense strangulation. However, let me disabuse you of that notion, even though he hasn't been convicted yet and it's still alleged. I do not think this meets the standard of self-defense, and I will explain it to you going through the New York Post article, which actually has more of the details from the indictment. Tyrese Minter is facing charges of a criminally negligent homicide, and unlike what the local news said about his hands being around the neck, it turns out that he actually wrapped his legs around the teen's neck in order to choke him out to the point of unconsciousness. And apparently, this was an argument after the teen had gotten home from school. Again, he's 15 years old, so he was going to school. It ends up getting physical, and he chokes him out to the point where, again, he was in fact unconscious. However, the reason he's being charged with a criminally negligent homicide is because Tyrese Minter, stepfather of the year, actually decided that an appropriate response to an unconscious child was to just, wait around for 20 minutes before calling 911, before attempting CPR, before doing anything. So the reason why this young man ended up losing his life is because his stepfather wouldn't take accountability for his actions. He choked him out. Totally inappropriate to do to somebody else's kid that you're fighting in the home. I don't give a damn what the justification was. Now, make no mistake, Minter is going with the self-defense argument. He claims initially that Scott came home from school, he was agitated, and he started screaming, and that's what he told the police. At another point, he claimed that the teen tried to attack him with a weapon, prompting him to wrestle the stepson to the ground and choke him out as unconscious. It also says that the boy had issues at school and was bullied, so we're going with a little bit of character assassination. And while you can claim a self-defense against somebody who comes at you with a weapon, 100%, I'm not against self-defense, I will point out that that speaks more to the manslaughter charge rather than the negligent homicide charge, which again is about that 20-minute period where this kid was unconscious and this guy decided that he wasn't going to call 911, no big deal. But to make matters worse, he ended up getting arraigned by a notoriously progressive, I'm not going to hold any criminal accountable judge, called Naita Semaj-Williams. Now, in case you're wondering about the history of Tyrese Minter, maybe he's Father of the Year, maybe he's a deacon at the church. I don't even know what a deacon is, but I know that's a thing in some churches. Maybe he volunteers at the soup kitchen every week. It turns out that's not the case. It turns out that Tyrese Minter, of course, is on parole for a crime, and he was only released this past December. The crime actually occurred on January 23rd of 2023, so he had been out of prison for less than a month after spending 3 years on a rap for felony assault. So this guy has a serious violent history. He's out on parole, which of course begs the question, why wasn't his parole violated? He killed a 15-year-old. Even if you say, hey, look, this guy has a reasonable self-defense case. Even if you say, hey, look, he's only ever killed one of his stepchildren, and I don't think he's going to kill any of his other stepchildren. Even if you make that ridiculous assertion, the whole point of parole is that you need to stay out of trouble as you're serving the rest of your sentence outside of incarceration under supervision. And I would think killing a 15-year-old over whatever argument would be a violation of that parole, but not for this progressive judge. She's not going to violate it, and of course, this is backed up by our stupid criminal justice reforms that were passed post-George Floyd Black Lives Matter riots, like less is more. This stupid, ridiculous law essentially nullifies any good that parole can be done, because in reality, a lot of people tend to overstate the badness and the negative outcomes on parole, because the alternatives to parole is a completely unsupervised release and no quick way to throw people back in prison. Essentially, what we have under less is more is that we have no way to hold these criminals accountable and no way to throw them back in prison. Again, you're supposed to be on your best behavior. Follow all the conditions of your parole. Your parole officer is supposed to be able to initiate a violation. A judge is supposed to initiate a violation if they notice you're involved in other criminality as a precaution, especially if you have a violent history. You're not supposed to be able to just kill somebody, be charged with a negligent homicide, not even call 911 20 minutes after you knock this kid out unconscious, and then still not have your parole violated. It's not even considered by the judge. The judge was like, well, you only murdered one 15-year-old kid. This kid only died and you only refused to call 911 for 20 minutes because you were more concerned about covering your own rear end than the life of this child. But so, it likely won't happen again. I mean, you have a violent history. This is a pattern of behavior. You assault people. You're an assaulter. That's what you do. But you know what? You deserve some freedom and some fresh air. I mean, honestly, how how bad did you feel during that 20 minutes where you decided to stare at an unconscious child on the ground and not call 911? How upset did that make you feel that you took this child, who wasn't even your child, somebody that you supposedly were supposed to take responsibility over as a stepfather, when you killed that child? I mean, honestly, think about it. If you really want to make a case, you could say that this guy was the real victim, or at least that's what this Bronx judge thinks, and that's why she released him, and again, didn't even consider violating his parole. The last case that we went into that specifically related to less is more, the guy was on parole for life. So you could say, you know what, he committed his crime 10, 15 years ago, maybe it was totally unfair to violate his parole, but it took the governor intervening, and only because Kathy Hochul was running in a more competitive election against the Legend of Zelda than she expected, to get that guy behind bars. But notice that this guy, out on parole only for a month, he was only released for a month, kills a 15-year-old, and Governor Kathy Hochul has no interest in violating anything. Governor Kathy Hochul says, hey, I'm not running for re-election at this moment, so the mother of this 15-year-old boy who has to bury this child due to the fact that the father is a violent assaulter who commits crimes, who does not even care enough to call 911 to get some damn help for her kid, waited 20 minutes before even considering that option, well, that mom can suck it, because you know what? Governor Kathy Hochul's already in office, and if you wanted to fix problems like this, guess what? You should have voted for the Legend of Zelda. That's essentially Kathy Hochul's position. She ain't revoking this, and by the way, the New York Post headline in that case was so pertinent to this situation because it basically said, is she going to do this another time, or are they going to change the laws? Well, guess what? They didn't change the laws, and it's happening again. This guy is out on the streets again. This guy can assault another person again. Remember, it only took him a month the last time for him to commit another crime, and that crime was killing a 15-year-old. And you know what's really frustrating about this? You know what's really annoying about this? Why did they pass these criminal justice reforms? What was the impetus behind it? What was the name of the group, of the idea, of the political movement that ended up releasing this criminal, this repeat offender who killed this 15-year-old boy? Look at him. It was called Black Lives Matter. If you're Tyrese Minter, 28 years old, you've had your chances, you've already been convicted of a crime, of assault, of hurting people, your life matters, and not inconveniencing your life matters, according to the Black Lives Matter ideology. But if you're 15-year-old Cordy Smith, you have your life out in front of you, you still have the option to make good choices, to become a productive member of society, and your life is taken by this criminal, by this repeat offender, by this person who didn't even have the kindness, the compassion, the care for his own stepson to call 911 for 20 minutes after knocking him out unconscious, 20 minutes that could have crucially saved this young man's life. Your life doesn't matter. I'm so tired of this. And for those of you who are going to say, oh, well, you get what you vote for, the left-wing district attorney in this case wanted this guy held in prison. The law, bail reform, which I've criticized probably more than anyone in the online space, didn't actually cover this crime. He could have been held incarcerated for this. And the parole violation, while it heavily leans to by state law, the perpetrator in this instance could have still been invoked in order to have this person there. The judge just wasn't having any of that. The judge decided that this criminal's right to kill supersedes that 15-year-old's right to live. How dare anybody suggest that this person be held behind bars awaiting trial, because the last time we released him, just a month later, he killed a 15-year-old. Anyway, that's all I really have for you guys today. I do want to announce that I was finally able to get my show up on Google Podcasts, which means I'm available on Spotify, I'm available on Apple Podcasts, and available now on Google Podcasts. Link in the description. Really helps me if you guys support me in the different forms that I'm on, also on alternative platforms and all of that. But it did take like 6 months for me to actually get onto Google's podcasting platform. So subscribe and do all that. And if you want to listen to the show there, that's great. If you like the video, show them by leaving a like, subscribe for more content, follow me on all my social media, support me via the support links in the description of this video. This has been me talking about another ridiculous case of left-wing criminal justice reform producing horrible results. Till next time.